So I promised a time of transition from this old season of Via Transformativa, which we've been doing for 20-some weeks, and moving into what is really the top of our liturgical year, the Via Positiva, as we begin to look at the path of awe and wonder in our lives. But I didn't want to leave out the rest of that Christmas story, the traditional Christmas story. And so I included We Three Kings because it's such a part of our Christian tradition and I think says something relevant to this kind of transition from transformativa into positive. So some of those words may be unfamiliar to you. We are grounded in creation spirituality, which begins with an assumption, a theological assumption of original blessing as opposed to original sin. And I have found in my journey of study and reflection and meditation that once I made that decision to go towards original blessing, away from original sin, it felt to me like that was a crossroads moment. And that happened for me probably maybe 15 years ago when I first encountered Matthew Fox's book, Original Blessing. And that book really changed me in terms of how I understood the divine in my life and what this spiritual journey was about. I had been reading Bishop Spong and I had been reading a lot of other people over the years, but it was that original blessing that really converted me to a different way of looking at my spiritual journey. So original blessing removes that curse, that presumed theological curse. Once you begin to go down that road of original blessing and begin to embrace the divinity that is in all things and is in you, and that we exist, like Paul says in his letters, we live and dwell and move within God. That it so much removes that obsessive need that so much of Christianity has for a Savior and to be made whole in God's eyes. That if we look at the biblical tradition from original blessing, you can see it throughout the text. And you can reframe the way you understand almost any part of the Bible. So original blessing becomes a touchstone for this community as we seek to find the divine within us in all things, in all people, and know that we dwell, hello Cheerios, that we dwell in the midst of God's presence. That really everything that is, including us, is in a way part of God's body, if you would. Because that is how God is manifest in the universe. Once you start down that path of original blessing, then I found a tremendous freedom in understanding more about who I was. Not that I'm perfect. Fear not that original blessing does not mean that we all are perfect as we are, or that we don't have growth towards wholeness to work towards in our lives. But it just makes the journey a different journey. It's about a journey of celebrating the divine and not being obsessive about this question of sin and falling short. So we've moved through the four paths. The fourth path that we've moved through is Via Transformativa, when we really look at how we as a community and how a spiritual community should be working as part of co-creation, so that we are still involved in the evolution of the universe and of creation and of society. And for me, I would understand that as moving towards a global, beloved community where we acknowledge that we are all one together and that we must learn to live in community and mutually support each other and care not only for each other as human beings, but that we need to care for the earth. The earth is not there for us to be super consumers. We're not here to devour the earth. The earth is here to sustain us, and in fact is our mothering environment in which we have our life and are able to have our life. Without earth, without Mother Earth, we cannot exist. There may be that magical planet somewhere out there in the universe that exists exactly the right distance from its sun, has exactly the right chemical makeup, has had exactly the same evolutionary history as the Earth. So far we don't know about it. So as far as I'm concerned, this is a pretty special place to have had my existence. So now we go back to the first path, the Via Positiva. And as an example of Via Positiva, I want to use those legendary, fictitious, never existed wise men who never came to the manger that never existed, and to Mary and Joseph and the good shepherds who never existed. It wasn't like it was in your, at least in my grade school. I always celebrated Christmas by celebrating the Christmas story in my public elementary school, where we told the story of Mary and Joseph and the baby Jesus, and some of us got to wear bathrobes, and some of us got to be wise men, and some of us got to be sheep. And I heard about our grandchildren still doing the same sort of thing at their church, but of course they can't do it at their school anymore. But those legends about the birth of Jesus came about long after Jesus had been killed, long after the community was formed, long after people began to see Jesus not only as an important person in history and a very special teacher, but somehow a manifestation of the divine in the world. And with all legendary characters of antiquity, myths develop about their origin, that they had to have a special origin. Somehow they had to be connected directly with the deity, either Zeus or some other great god, because they were so extraordinary. They couldn't just be a regular human being. So those same kind of legends grew up around Jesus in order to explain, well, why was he such a fantastic guy? Why are so many people following him? Why did our lives change when we encountered his message in the world? And if you look at the earliest gospel writer, the Gospel of Thomas and then the Gospel of Mark, they don't care where Jesus came from. The earliest writings in the New Testament doesn't care where Jesus came from. Paul, who wrote the first words of the New Testament, of what became the New Testament, doesn't care where Jesus came from, or who he was, or who this Joseph was, or was he born in Bethlehem, or born in Nazareth, or born in a cave, or born in a manger. All of those traditions exist out there. But the gospel writer of Matthew, whom we're reading tonight, wants to place Jesus in the history of Israel. He wants Jesus to be a direct descendant of David, and so he writes this genealogy in which Jesus ends up being a descendant of David. And where does the Hebrew Scriptures say that Jesus will be born? Where will the Messiah, where will the Anointed One be born? He will be born in the city of David. So what is the city of David? It's not Nazareth. It's not Jericho. It's not Jerusalem. It is Bethlehem. And so somehow Matthew has to get Jesus born in Bethlehem. And he does in his story. And Matthew wants us to understand that Jesus is the new Moses. Jesus is going to lead his people out of captivity. And Matthew also wants us to understand that all the nations of the world will come to follow Jesus. And so here come the three magi, just as were foretold in the ancient scriptures, ancient Hebrew scriptures, that wise men from afar would come and worship. Matthew reappropriates that about the Jesus story. And why do I think that might have something to say to us about the via positiva, about finding God in awe and wonder, finding God in creation? What is their response when they get there to that lowly manger in the Matthew story? They are overwhelmed with awe. They are overwhelmed with wonder. What happens around this wonderful, awesome story is the power of Rome. The power of Rome is out to try to do in this good news baby. Herod lies. It's a bold-faced lie. Tell me where you find him so that I can come and worship him. If Herod was telling the truth, he would have said, tell me where you find him so that I can come and kill him. Because the Roman Empire already knows how powerful Jesus is when this story is written. When Matthew is writing, they already know how much Jesus was in the face of Rome and how Rome had killed him, hoping to extinguish him like a cockroach. So Matthew kind of makes a joke, I think, that Herod was going to go and get rid of Jesus from the beginning at his birth, but messes up. The wise men are truly filled with wisdom. They go home another way, and they don't tell Herod where he is. Jesus' first near-death experience. He's not even 12 days old if you take the story literally. Then Matthew has Mary and Joseph. Where do Mary and Joseph go from Bethlehem? Anyone know besides Beth? You always know?
Egypt.
Where?
Egypt.
Egypt. And why? Why would Matthew have Mary and Joseph and the baby Jesus go to Egypt? I just told you. For Matthew, Jesus is the new Moses. Where did the new Moses lead? Where did the old Moses lead his people out of captivity? Out of Egypt. And so the story goes, according to Matthew, that they escape to Egypt. Jesus comes out of Egypt as the new liberator, as the new Moses. And they settle down in their hometown of Nazareth. Awe and wonder. Usually I talk about awe and wonder, and I will in coming weeks because of creation. But tonight I talk about awe and wonder because apparently the universe contains a desire. The universe contains a desire for love, for diversity, for community, for connection. That, I think, is phenomenal news. Because we could, as some believe, live in a universe that really doesn't give a hoot about anything. It just is. It's a random collection of events that have happened for 14 billion years. Some people believe that's the universe. And maybe it is. Maybe I'm delusional. Maybe it's just because I can't handle the truth that no one really gives a damn about me, or about my life, or about what I do, or that I love, or that I'm a presence of the divine in the world. But I happen to choose, like the wise guys, that when I encounter the presence of God in this beautiful baby Jesus, which I can encounter in my life today. I can think about that baby Jesus being born, because regardless of the details, yes, he was born. And I think it's awesome. I am filled with wonder that this person came into the world with the message that he came into the world with. That he suggested that peace comes from equality. That compassion is possible. That love is present in the universe. And I choose to be awed and filled with wonder at that presence. And I call that presence divine. I can see in that life the presence of Creator to bring about the beloved community on this planet. I am filled with awe and wonder at my encounter with that baby Jesus, because I know what he grows up to be, how he lives, what he teaches, and I am thankful that somebody in my past introduced me to him. Awe and wonder. That's what this path is about. This path of the positive, if you will, in our lives. How is it that we encounter a Creator in everyone and everything around us? How is it that we open ourselves to that awe and